Hi, Adam Horton. We're going to do a little bit of meta Dominion coaching because we're going to watch a video that Jake did, and I'm going to do the coaching thing to him, just like he's planning to do with all the people that submit him videos. So that's funny. Anyway, we're going to take a look at this kingdom. Uh, let's just listen to the last part of Jake's strategy talk, and then we'll get into it.
I see that the main way to get control of my deck is going to be um, via Apothecary and probably Warehouse. And the end goal of the deck may be big conquests with Fatum points, but I'm not really sure yet. So we will see what we come up with here.
Okay, so you talk about Conquest Fatum. Later on in the video, you revisit that, and then you decide that it's bad, which it is. We'll get to that later. But I think you've hit on the crux of what's going on here. You do want to draw your deck, and there is no thinning, so that's hard to do. And you do spot Apothecary as a really good way to mitigate the fact that there's no thinning. And it is. I mean, it means that if you can have Apothecaries and play them, you don't really have to worry about naturally drawing those 7 coppers and then the potion you add to your deck. So it's kind of one of the better substitutes you have for thinning here. But when there is no thinning, you do want to look at a lot of the other cycling resources that you have to try and compensate for that fact, because a reliable deck is usually going to be better than one that's not reliable. Investing in that is pretty important. So what are the cycling resources we have? Well, there's spamming, meaning you want a lot of cards so that you have a higher chance of starting your turn with those cards. So yeah, you do want to get a lot of Apothecaries, and you want to get a lot of cards that draw cards, and the converse of that, or inverse or whatever, the other part of that is contrapositive. There it is. You don't want to get a lot of cards that don't draw, right? You don't want to be getting stop cards. So until you're drawing and potentially even overdrawing your deck, you have to think really hard about putting in any stop cards to your deck. So the potion is a necessary thing, but I'm really not wanting to do that until I'm drawing everything, because that's usually just the better way to build decks that intend to draw themselves, especially when reliability is an issue. What are some of the other cycling resources we have besides spamming? Well, there's filtering. I mean, there's both Apothecary and Warehouse. They serve that purpose pretty well. And Apothecary really does like that kind of filtering that Warehouse does offer. So there is a little bit of synergy, although you have to be careful about how you play it. A little more careful, I think, than what ends up happening here. Because there is a little bit of opposition between increasing your hand size with Apothecary and decreasing with Warehouse. But also, the filtering here provided by those 2 cards is really good. That's why Apothecary is good. It can almost be as good as thinning those coppers, which you can't do here. What are some other resources? So there's top decking. And so usually in decks that want to draw a lot and have reliability issues, top decking is kind of the best form of that reliability. Now, you can't directly top deck your best components here, and you really don't want to overbuild because you want to be playing a lot of your cards. There's a lot of stuff you have to draw, right? However, there is something that functions a lot like that, which is Ghost Town. In Ghost Town, you play it now, and then you save that value for next turn. The action at the start of your turn is great because you want to be putting a lot of hunting grounds in the deck to just draw cards, right? But I mean, what you want to do is have maybe 1 or 2 Ghost Towns in play at the start of every turn, and then that's going to give you more chances to find the high number of cards that you have in your deck that draw cards. And so there's a little bit of a reason to be overdrawing here as well, because both Pawn and Bandit are cards that can reward you for overdraw. Pawn can just be used as payload, or it can be used for draw. It has that flexibility. And then Bandit can mid-turn gain some golds, which will add for your payload, and that's pretty good too. You do open with a potion, and then
here. For the compliments.
So you do get a Warehouse, and it looks like your Warehouse is going to work out for you. You do draw it on turn 3, so it does work out for you. I would have seriously considered opening with a Pawn, and no one gets Pawn this whole game. I think Pawn is amazing here, especially to open with your potion. Pawn can give you a card, and pawn can give you a buy, which are both extremely useful here. The buy, because you're getting a lot of apothecaries, and apothecary really wants plus buy. You're going to have a few turns here that are a lot of money in a potion, and a buy would have been great there. And then second, the card is a big deal because in the worst case, pawn can just not be a stop card. Now, warehouse is good, and you certainly want it, and I have my opinions about opening warehouse. It certainly works out for you here. I think the warehouse opening is also fine, but I think pawn is great, and I personally would have opened pawn because it's a bit more consistent. So, let's fast forward just a touch here.
I think it's probably a silver, right? Like, the poacher is decent, but if I buy a silver now, it just makes it that much better if I do decide to go for Fatum later. So, I'll get the silver.
Okay, so there were still a little bit of thoughts about Conquest Fatum here as your payload, and if you were going for something Fatum centered, then I think the silver there probably would have been fine. In this case, assuming that we're not going to see the value of pawn this game, which was honestly probably the best card to put in your deck at this point, but this will be the last time that I continue reminding you about pawns because they're going to get less good when you can afford Festival. And Festival is pretty good for hunting grounds. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. The poacher, I think, is definitely better than the silver. The only reason you would want the silver is if you were going for a Fatum strat, and I mean, silver's a stop card, so I think it's as simple as that. Why is Conquest Fatum bad? Well, normally you can just get more points by buying provinces, right? Yeah, that's about it. So anyway, let's fast forward just a little bit. So you get an apothecary on your next turn. You have this delicious warehouse turn, and then you buy.
Next up, I could go for a festival, or I could go for a, what is this? Gain 2 silvers, +1 silver, purse, +1 point per silver you gain this turn. Yeah, I could be going for, at this point, a festival, or I could get a library. I think or I could get a bandit and use my apothecary and warehouse to cycle to my bandit quite often and go big money that way. But I think that the festival is the most appealing option of those.
So yeah, I do like the festival here. The festival gives you plus buy, which you don't have yet, and is extremely important. You want a lot of copies of plus buy in your deck so that you can make sure that on your big turns you have one, right? So getting the festival is quite good here. Also, it's going to work really well with the future hunting grounds that you totally get this game. But I want to talk a bit about Bandit, because I do think Bandit is a good card for the deck that I want you to build eventually. Bandit is part of the reason why overdrawing your deck is quite good here, because now that we've established, hey, we don't want to put any stop cards until we're drawing or overdrawing our deck, Bandit's really great for rapidly expanding your payload. You gain a gold, and you can potentially draw it that turn, and all you have to do is spend an action card. The attack can kind of be relevant, but meh. Really, it's the gold gain that's pretty good here. So, yes, you do want the Bandit probably, even though you never pick one up because but you don't want to get that until you have full control over your deck. And let's fast forward just a little more.
Okay. Put those back. Get an apothecary and a warehouse.
So, you were looking at the hunting grounds at the beginning of your turn here. You end up with apothecary plus warehouse. So, I think it's close between getting a hunting grounds and getting apothecary plus something else. I think you really do want hunting grounds in your deck, and I think that's important. The fact that you didn't think about it is, something that I would try and adjust for. I think a goal that you should have is to hit 6 so you can put hunting grounds in your deck. The third warehouse, on the other hand, so the third warehouse, I think that's too much for right now. I think 2 is plenty for your deck. I don't think the 3rd is going to be helping you now. Maybe you pick it up a lot later, but I think, you know, putting cards in your hand is definitely better than putting them in your hand and then in your discard, right? Yeah, of course, the hunting grounds cost more. You're getting the apothecary, but the apothecaries are going to get less and less useful for actual raw card draw as the game goes on, because less of your cards are going to be copper/potion, and so you're going to have trouble increasing your hand size. And so you want to really be transitioning towards getting more hunting grounds, and there will come a point where like you definitely want to be picking up hunting grounds over apothecary if you get the choice. The choice was there. I think it was close. That was probably the turning point. Okay, now let's jump ahead a few turns. Well, one more turn. So let's go to the next turn where you have 7 potion here.
I think I'll take the apothecary.
Yeah, this one definitely is hunting grounds. There's no question here. You're not getting apothecary plus a thing. You're just apothecary versus hunting ground. Hunting ground is by far a better card for your deck. Like you have, I think you have multiple festivals in your deck by this point, and like you don't even have any terminals. So like the terminal space is there. Just get the hunting grounds here. So yeah, let's jump ahead a little bit.
Estates and made my next turn horrible.
So yeah, you buy the apothecary here, which I think is good.
Apothecary. Okay. Let's think for a second. Do I go hunting grounds warehouse? Hey, Adam Horton joined the table. Hi, Adam Horton. Let's go with festival actually.
Okay, so I don't think these festivals were very good. You have plenty of actions, you have enough buys, and your deck is really going to struggle with card draw. Like, what does your deck do at this point? I think it revolves around the whole idea of drawing extra cards with apothecary and getting value from warehouse that way. And you're gonna see over the next few turns that your deck is not going to perform as well as it could have if you had put some hunting grounds in it. And I think we should just like drink in a couple of these turns and just imagine that like there was a hunting ground somewhere when you're thinking about like, oh, what cards do I want to be discarding?
Wait a minute, is this Adam Horton from the Adam Horton podcast?
Yeah, that's me. And, you know, now that you know that you're in the presence of someone that you look up to so much,
I'm so starstruck.
You really don't want to be messing up. So, like, try not to screw up here. You really want to be making the best decisions for your deck. But, like, here, this warehouse really hurts you, right?
Go. Apothecary, put those on top. Apothecary, that. Apothecary, you. Apothecary, all of us. Okay. Apothecary. And...
Okay, so let's take a look at what happened here. I don't even think that you pick up on this. These 7 cards are all bad. You discarded them to these first 3 warehouses, and then you managed to draw 2 of them. So these 7 cards are all things that you discarded to a warehouse. And this is really bad. It basically nerfs your next 2 turns. It only has to nerf 1. We'll get there. But this is really, really, really bad. And so what needed to happen is right around here when you were looking at this. Actually, when you were looking at this is when you needed to be thinking about, well, I can't get all the way through this shuffle. There's too many cards in here. So what am I going to do about it? And I think you have a couple of good options. You can try and top deck this apothecary, which you basically do. Another thing that you could do, so here you can just top deck the apothecary and discard a copper and have a turn. But even after you do it this way,
okay,
where you draw the apothecary instead, once, before you discard there,
okay,
still, even in this case, even given that you have this slightly suboptimal thing where you're top decking, I think, a festival now instead of an apothecary, you can still discard this Apothecary, and it's much better than triggering this shuffle. So like this is the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about a lot earlier in your turn. You need to hit the brakes and be like, wait a second, can I get through this shuffle? What's in there? And it's actually not hard to track because you can just look at how many warehouses you're going to have in play, and it's that many cards, right? And so if you have no way to get through those, then obviously you don't want to trigger the shuffle. But really, like that needs to be on your mind from the start of the turn, so that by that point a little bit ago, you know to start adjusting the decisions that you make to accommodate for the fact that, like, hey, I'm not going to trigger this shuffle, so maybe I can try and top deck something good, or maybe I can get the best value out of my turn. Actually, that's an inclusive or, because you could have done them both here, by making the best decisions. You know, Apothecary is a card that reaches a lot of cards into your deck. So that means you're going to have to make that decision earlier, right? Okay, so let's continue here and see what you end up doing with your turns.
Wasn't expecting to have very many of those. Okay, let's get another warehouse.
Okay, so right here, you very quickly get a warehouse. And this is, I think, your 5th warehouse. Already, you are starting to feel the crunch of this whole Apothecary warehouse thing, having to make these painful decisions. So more warehouses isn't particularly going to help you. The warehouses are not the components you need more of. The components that you really need more of are things that put more cards in your hand. So like you're looking for Apothecary and maybe a higher density of coppers. But realistically, you wanted more Hunting Grounds, right? Anyway, I think the fact that you want more Hunting Grounds in your deck actually suggests that Ghost Town is quite a good card for you. I think Ghost Town is very important in this deck, given the previous discussion about like the cycling resources. Ghost Town's a real star here. And also, you know, I think now that you do have this Hunting Grounds in your deck that you did pick up last turn, about time, right? You should probably try and aim to have a Ghost Town in play every turn. And Ghost Town's nice because you can just buy it every turn and be fine, especially over warehouse number 5 that doesn't do much for you. So,
wasn't expecting to have very many of those. Okay.
And obviously this is a bit results oriented, but it definitely would have saved this turn.
Okay.
You would have had a very, very good turn. Because I think if we track the future of your shuffles here, it would have been good there. So anyway, we play out a couple of turns here, and the deck kind of does what it does. And let's skip to here. So at this point, you have bought 1 province, and let's just...
I'm focusing, Adam. You hush.
No,
okay.
I won't hush, Jake. You need to focus more on what I tell you to focus on.
I don't want to, though.
So here, this is good. But now, the next card you play, right? What should the next card you play here be? You have 3 cards on top of your deck, and these are good cards. I mean, one of them's good. The Apothecary's good. The Warehouse and the Province aren't fantastic, but it's not exactly what you want to be discarding. What you really want to be doing is you want to be drawing this stuff and then playing an Apothecary next, right? So like this is the point where you need to play the Festival Hunting Grounds. I mean, this is a pretty simple principle. Like, you know, you want to play all your card draw before your warehouses. So like all your cantrips in your draw, your warehouses are going to get better if you have more stuff to choose from. And so the fact that actually this festival and this Hunting Grounds, this actually sits in your hand for the entire turn. And so like just think about like how your entire turn is getting worse because of this, and like how good the Hunting Grounds is, how much better that's going to make your turn. And then we'll see what the result of the turn is and think, well, maybe we wish we had more Hunting Grounds, but let's just watch this turn with that in mind.
Yep. The delicious truth. You shut up, Adam.
No, I won't shut up. You want some delicious truth.
And I wonder if he knows I'm recording this. I probably am.
I don't.
Just gonna get
I don't know that he's recording this. I
I
wonder if he knows that I'm recording this.
Warehouse.
So
I don't
meta.
think it really actually makes a huge difference, but I'm gonna want to be playing my warehouses anyway, so might as well have stuff. Okay, discarding. At this point, could I draw my deck is what I need to answer for myself. And I think there's a fairly decent odds of me doing that. If I just draw through everything, okay, I'm less confident now. Um,
Yeah, so I'm less confident now. Um, so yeah, you could have counted the number of warehouses that you had in play. There were 4 of them. There are 12 cards to get through. And in the most optimistic case, like, you still don't have enough cards to get through them. But like, you actually could have done something about this. Given that you don't like the idea of triggering the shuffle, your turn could have been a lot better if you had played fewer warehouses and then not triggered the shuffle, or maybe even fewer warehouses and triggered the shuffle would have been okay at that point. But like, the fact that you're having to play such a high quantity of warehouses even early on in your turn, where you're discarding cards that you maybe would not rather discard, is something that really is hurting you here. So like, so really, when there were like 7 or so cards in the shuffle, kind of like that last turn, that's when you need to be deciding what you're doing, whether you're triggering that shuffle. Again, this is another case of that happening.
Yeah, this was if I don't draw my deck, this was a huge mistake because I just made like a really bad shuffle happen to me.
Right, and so like you actually do realize this,
Okay.
but I don't know that.
To do that.
I mean, you've made this mistake a couple of times in the game. So like, even if you are able to adapt and learn during the course of the game, finally the hunting grounds. Oh, it's so good. It's the last card.
Okay.
But if you're going to adapt during the
yeah,
course of the
so
game,
that
like,
was
this turn
terrible.
could have been better if
That
you
was a
had
super
noticed
suboptimal play on my part.
and
Maybe
learned
like
from
the
that
worst
previous
of all time
shuffle.
happened. My
So
next
this
turn
is
going to be garbage.
something else.
So
So anyway, we've gone through this. There's one more thing I want to look at. So we have 3 provinces now. We're at the top of a shuffle. Here's this delicious dud that we caused last turn, and our opponent here got a bunch of ghost towns, and so he's probably going to have a big turn. If we haven't paid much attention on this video, but if we were paying attention in the game, he's going to have a big turn. Here we have $5 and a buy, and we're thinking about what to get. And, well...
for 5 feels kind of bad, but, like, I think it's the best card for my deck.
So you actually do mention Ghost Town in your commentary, and it's baffling to me how you land on Warehouse between all your options. I think there's only 2 options here. Option number 1 is Duchy. If we're feeling really threatened by our opponent's potential this turn, like, he can probably triple Province this turn, maybe with some good luck. The Duchy could potentially be useful if we're not confident about having a good turn next turn, which we shouldn't be. I mean, this is a way that we can lose the game. So the Duchy, given the fact that you're very unlikely to actually see that Duchy, is a really, really good call. But Ghost Town, man, like, Ghost Town is actually a card that's going to make a difference. You're never going to see that Warehouse, but the Ghost Town goes in your hand and you can play it. And, like, that's just having a good turn next turn is going to be way more powerful than that Duchy. So, like, that's what should be going through your mind. I know there are 5 provinces left, but you have to see something like this. You have to pay closer attention to your opponent and realize, holy crap, my opponent has 4 hunting grounds in their deck and 3 ghost towns out. They're going to have a big turn, and I need to be careful. I need to be thinking about the end game here. So, the other thing that we can notice here is there are 34 cards in this deck, and there are 8 of those cards, 7 coppers and a potion, that you can draw for free from apothecaries. Aside from this one single copy of Hunting Grounds, that's the only way you have of increasing your hand size in this deck. And, I mean, your turns could have been a lot better, a lot like what we're about to see from the opponent here.
Even though I had more money than Warehouse costs, I think that...
you could have been having those turns earlier and often with Apothecary to accelerate you.
Adam is disappointed nobody's going for Conquest Fatum.
So I do think that the foundation of this deck
too.
using Apothecary and Warehouse
mostly.
centered on that for draw is pretty weak, mainly because you just need to be drawing more coppers with your Apothecary in order to increase your hand size. And then you also somehow need to
so that
like
might be
have something good to do
part,
other than playing coppers.
If I double Province, which I might...
Yeah, I think from the opponent I like getting 2 provinces and leaving 3 in the supply. Probably getting a Duchy because you're going to need it to win. But you do have a shot if Jake double provinces, you get an extra turn. So that's the other thing. Anyway, that was about all I had to say about this game. Jake does win the game. He double provinces on this turn and wins the game. The rest of his play, I think, is fine. But hey, hopefully we all learn from this. Hopefully Jake learns from this, because that's kind of the whole point. Thanks for watching.